Well, welcome to the very first episode of the Chestnut Bookcase podcast. A podcast by a chess book nutcase. This play on words, I blame my wife. But now, to be clear as well, this is an experiment. I just want to see if other chess players find this fun and then just simply see how it goes. There are wonderful chess commentators and podcasters out there already, not least the superb Perpetual Chess podcast by Ben Johnson, which I think we can all agree is an absolute goldmine. So why then the Chestnut Bookcase podcast? Well, I always think there can be never too much of a good thing. And I'm, simply speaking, just a chess enthusiast. For getting on to near 20 years, I've been an avid collector of chess books, and I've now amassed a library, don't tell my wife this, of hundreds of volumes from classic texts to the latest publications. So I've spent countless hours in chess literature. It's been a source of endless fascination and enjoyment. So why not create another podcast about something I enjoy so much? I haven't played a full-time control game in chess in over a decade. I've got kids. My priorities lie elsewhere. But I follow chess news and tournaments avidly, so I'm well acquainted with chess culture. And I think that my modest chess strengths position me as a relatable host, hopefully. I'm not going to intimidate anybody. Listeners, please hear that. If you're a beginner to chess, I'm not far off from that. So I hope that this podcast, if it gets off the ground, is going to be accessible to a wide range of chess enthusiasts, from beginners, perhaps even to titled players. So I'm Chris Tilling, your host. I'm actually a doctor of theology, a senior lecturer in New Testament studies, and a co-host of a theology-related podcast entitled On Script. But today, that is of little relevance. I am first and foremost, for this podcast, a chess book nutcase. So, to quote my wife. And today, on our very first episode, I am thrilled and honoured to be joined by Vishnu Warrier, the brilliant mind behind the Chess Bible. Vishnu's book is a treasure trove of wisdom for chess players at every level, packed with tips, axioms and one-liners that are not only informative, but a lot of fun to read. It's also a book that caters for a wide skill level. And this is one thing I've discovered about reading the book. It also caters for a wide level of energy levels. You know, sometimes I just want to read a chess book to enjoy and not be taxed too much. Other times I want to really practice visualizing variations and playing it all out in my head. This is a book that caters for both. So it's an absolute pleasure to be joined by the author today, who is a USCF candidate chess master. He has over 20 years of experience competing in tournaments and 15 plus years of coaching experience. He was the co-founder of the North Texas Chess Academy, which is now the Texas Chess Center. In 2022, Vishnu published the Chess Bible, the book that we'll be talking about today largely, incorporating lessons that he learned from his love of the game. The Chess Bible was one of the best-selling books by Thinkers Publishing, well deserved as well. Vishnu won the under 2,300 section in the 2024 Chicago Open, despite being the 60th seed out of 120 participants. Congratulations on that.
And 22. 2022.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, 122. Yeah,
no problem.
And
123, but in 2022.
2022. I got my facts all wrong there. I will correct that.
No, you're fine. It just you got everything right except the year, but all good.
There's actually an article online, and I'll put a link to that on the podcast information. Vishnu Warrior, the champion nobody saw coming. That was on chessmood.com. And by winning that tournament, gained an enormous 130 rating points and achieved his peak rating of 2,173. Now, I won't go into everything that Vishnu is professionally. Needless to say, it is incredibly impressive. I simply wanted to extend my warm welcome to you. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure's all mine.
Well, this podcast, this chat is going to be divided into a number of sections. We've got opening moves where we're going to be talking to you a little bit about your chess origin and your chess origin story before diving in the middle game, as I'm calling it, into the chess Bible. I've got a quick fire round which I thought I'd call the Confessional Booth before finishing off with some end game questions where the future is taking you. So let's start off with your chess origin story. Can you share the moment or experience when you first got bitten by the chess bug? You know, what drew you in?
Yeah, so I actually learned chess quite young. When I was 3 years old, it was Christmas Day, and we went to a family friend's house that day. And that family friend hadn't bought anything for me for Christmas because it was kind of impromptu when we went. So they felt quite bad, and the only place that was open was Walgreens on Christmas Day. And the first thing she found was a chess and checkers plastic chess set and checkers set. So she bought that for me, and the next day my parents taught me how to play. But at first I wasn't very much into the game once I had learned. I played a few times with my parents, and I went to a chess camp when I was 5 or 7 years old, but I'd play maybe once every 3 or 6 months. But when I was 9, we had moved from Houston to Dallas, and our school had a chess club and a chess team, and my best friend at the time was a couple years younger than me. He was a neighborhood kid. And his father said, hey, we're going down from Dallas to Houston to play in the state championship tournament. We need one other player to participate in the tournament for the school for the 4th through 6th grade age category. So I went with them and played and won 3, lost 3, and drew 1. So with a score of 3.5 out of 7, I realized I'm not very good, but I'm not terrible, which I think was a perfect score for me because I really enjoyed the competitive atmosphere. I still remember even stepping into the hall 20 minutes prior to the round where it's just dead silent, seeing all the tables and pieces meticulously lined so, and just the silence of the room.
Yeah.
And that memory will always stick with me. I just remember walking in at 9 years old and just knowing I'm meant to be in this place, and I really enjoyed the silence prior to the round. It's the calm before the storm, that saying. So I truly have experienced that, and even now when I go play tournaments, I always try to go a little bit early prior to the round just to feel that experience again and get my mind in the right zone prior to playing.
Lovely. So it's a real encouragement, isn't it, just to get into tournament play, to experience that unusual anticipation and atmosphere. Yeah, I completely relate to that. Now, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your own chess style. How would you describe it? What does it look like in your play or approach? Are there famous players or games that have influenced the way you think about chess?
I'm definitely more of a dynamic player and much more intuitive. The problem is I can't calculate for my life. Or I can. I'm just quite lazy at doing it. This is probably what's holding me back from getting to the master level and beyond. When I was a child, I used to read a fair amount of books, and the games I would go through, at least from my coach, were a lot of Greco games. I initially started with a lot of very old games by Greco, Anderson, Philidor, a lot of romantic style chess games. Yeah. So when I was in my youth, I used to play, King's Gambit exclusively, and that even now I don't play the King's Gambit anymore, but I'll bust it out from time to time, really because I just love the romantic era of chess and the tactics and the sharp style from those games, and I enjoy putting my opponents under pressure, which is why I think even online I'm not nearly as good of a player as I am offline. I think over the board I play much better than I do online. Also, my mouse skills are terrible. So I think the the pressure and the initiative and being able to play in an aggressive attacking style has always stood out to me, which is why my favorite world champion is Tal, without saying.
Okay.
I loved Tal's games and
Yeah.
the sacrifices. That was one of the chapters I probably read in Kasparov's My Great Predecessors. I probably read that particular chapter on Tal at least 10 times. The other ones, not as much.
Yeah, I love the life and games of Mikhail Tal. I had to get that one rebound. I enjoyed it so much it was falling apart, although that was typical then of Cadogan chess books. They tended to fall apart a little bit easy. And I like the fact that you said that you began with the King's Gambit. That's the most embarrassing experience I've ever had at a chess tournament. I thought I'd whip out the King's Gambit without any preparation in a classical game. And I had to resign, and I think it was probably under 10 moves because I didn't know what I was doing, and it was a complete mess. A memory I'm glad to assign to the dustbin. Now, what is it about chess that keeps you coming back? You know, is there a particular element, strategy, tactics, its history that you find especially fascinating?
I think it's three things. I think that's a very difficult answer to give at once, so I'll give all three. Number one is the history. It's truly fascinating that chess is a game that's thousands of years old. And if you really think about the fact, the person who created this game must truly have been a genius. We don't even know who that is now. We don't know who is the creator of chess. But that person must have been a true genius. How do you create a game that's able to be learned in 20 moves? This is thousands of years ago. How do you create a game that can be learned thousands of years ago in 20 minutes? Because learning the rules of chess takes about 20 minutes, but takes a lifetime to master.
Yeah.
And only the last 20 years with modern computers have computers surpassed humans in this game. So it's truly fascinating the history behind how it was created and how it's evolved throughout the years. And it's taken this long to get to the point where computers have, quote, surpassed humans. It's still, there's more to learn. And that leads me to the second part of chess that I love is there's always more to learn. It doesn't matter if you're Magnus Carlsen, Ding Liren, doesn't matter who you are, whether you're world champion or not. Regardless of your level, you can always get better. You can always get better. And it just depends on how curious you are. If you're constantly willing to ask the question, why, and just go deeper and deeper and deeper into a position or positions, that will take you to the next level. And that's what truly fascinates me is the ability to constantly ask the question why and just remain endlessly curious. And I think that's something that children have a benefit over adults is they have the time and the ability and the desire to always ask the question why, because, well, as a child, everything's new to you. As an adult, you tend to get a little bit more set in your ways. So I think that's one of the other reasons that we see children, especially now with computers, are becoming just stronger than we are, is not just because of computers, but they have this natural inherent curiosity that just keeps them going. The third reason is, of course, the competitive atmosphere. I'm a very competitive person by nature, at least in things that I like. If I like something and I want to get better at it, I'm very competitive. I don't particularly enjoy losing, like any competitor, but I enjoy the process and I enjoy winning more than I dislike losing, at least when it comes to chess. So for that reason, yes, when I was a child, I would cry after games. And even now, yes, there are times I'm close to that point, but now it's more about I just want to keep learning and getting better. Don't think I've necessarily hit my peak. We'll see. I think right now priorities are different for me, but eventually, yes, when time permitting, I can come back to chess and really focus. I will do that. It's something I still want to do and still want to pursue. I don't think that's ever gone away and will ever go away, and I'm willing to work hard to do it.
Yeah. A mutual friend of ours, Daniel from Thinkers Publishing, once said to me when we were talking about just me not having time to improve in chess, he says, I'll just be a grandmaster in being a dad. And I took that to heart. Now, chess can be, as you've just intimated, deeply frustrating. Someone on Twitter has the handle "Why must I lose to this idiot," which I think is fantastic. But what aspects of the game do you find most frustrating, and how do you overcome that frustration or those challenges?
I think one is simple one is when I studied an opening and I just forgot what I was supposed to do. Like I know, for example, this opening is, quote, bad for a reason, and I had studied it. It's different if you know it's bad for a reason and you didn't study it, but if you did study it and you know it's bad for a reason and you just don't remember how to punish it, that that is incredibly frustrating for me. Uh, so that just means, okay, I need to go work harder and remember that opening and not forget it again. So that's a very simple example. I think another thing is just with for me is blundering in time pressure. I'm usually pretty good about not getting into time pressure in the first place, but when I do, I obviously, like most players who are human, everyone's human that you're playing, right? I just don't make good decisions. Of course, I would never hope that my intuitive skills are, I mean, I would hope, I don't think they will ever be there in this lifetime or ever going to be as good as Nakamura's in Bullet, and just being able to blitz out, almost 99% accuracy moves with less than 5 seconds. But, you can always dream and you can try to work to get to that level.
Indeed.
But yeah, for me, it's part of the game. It's part of the learning process. So yeah. I try not to beat myself up too much. It's okay to beat yourself a little bit. I think that's necessary, but not too much that you crush your own confidence.
Yeah, right. It can easily cross over into self-loathing, can't it?
Correct.
The blunder proneness. Yeah, I understand. Now, to the middle game, then let's turn to the chess Bible. What inspired you to write the book? Can you tell us about the big idea that you hope readers will take away from it?
Okay, so I think there's two questions with that. First, what inspired me to write it? And the second is, what do I hope readers will take away? So let me answer the first one. What inspired me to write it? The answer to that is actually quite simple, which is I just wanted to create a blunder checklist of myself of things I knew intuitively already that I could review prior to playing games so that I wouldn't make obvious blunders, and I would be able to bring the ideas that I knew intuitively from my subconscious to my conscious, that when I'm playing a game, I'm able to find those ideas more quickly. And because I've read them right before the game, they're already fresh in my mind, that I'm already looking for those type of things. So for example, 3 tempos is worth a pawn, or knights on the rim are grim, or passed pawns must be pushed, or even when you're playing against a hanging pawn structure, right? This is the very particular formation of the queen, the rook, and the 2 rooks against that hanging pawn structure. And how do you get the pawn on c3 and d4, that type of hanging pawn structure? How, as black, do you place the queens and rooks? Why do you trade the minor pieces? How do you place the queens and rooks on those positions in order to extract the most out of that position? And so I created that as a checklist for myself. It was really inspired by Bruce Pandolfini's 64 Commandments of Chess. So when I was a kid, about 1,000 rated, my pre-tournament ritual, which was told to me by my coach, was to read the 64 Commandments before every single tournament game. So that would take me just 10, 15 minutes prior to every game. And this is back in the early 2000s, pre-computer really taking off, right? Instead of studying opening lines and preparing for opponents in that manner, I would read this list, and that would help me just get my mind in the right zone to play and to not forget things that I've already learned. And this process of writing the Chess Bible began in about 2020 during the pandemic. I was thinking of expanding upon Pandolfini's set of 64 axioms, and I eventually ended up coming up with about 200. And the process of writing the book was just every time I had an axiom, I would just start writing the position. I'd usually, the first 110, 115 of the 200 were actually quite easy. I wrote those within the 3, 4, or 5 months. And then I had about an 18-month break because I just could not figure out the other 70, 80 axioms, and B, it took me forever to find examples or think through examples. But thanks to the help of Abhijit Gregorian, the founder and CEO of Chessmood, he was extremely helpful, along with several other friends of mine, Julio Sidora and a few others to mention, that helped me find positions and helped me find axioms. And I was able to kind of incorporate that into the game and into the book.
And I thought you did a terrific job in picking those examples that made one point particularly clear. It was.
Oh, thank you.
It made it a lot of fun to read because it was encouraging. I can understand this point being made, even in the chaos of this particular position. Maybe you could. What are you most proud of about the book? Is there a particular chapter or axiom or piece of analysis that stands out?
It's very difficult to pick just one. I mean, I'm proud of the book. I think what I'm not so happy about is I could have always made it better. And I think eventually I will do a version 2.0, which I think there'll be I've taken down a few additional axioms, maybe about 10 or 15 that I will add. So I'll definitely add those. So that's one thing. The person who's great at giving axioms, honestly, is Daniel Naroditsky and Sam Shankland. I like a lot of their videos, and they say some very clever things. Of course, in addition to Levy, who I watch as well.
Yeah.
So all three of them have actually said something in their videos that I'm going to incorporate into version 2.0. And then also with version 2.0, I do plan on creating a workbook as well, because in the current version of the Chess Bible, it's just, here are the positions, here are the axioms, like here are the answers. That's it. Yeah. There's no necessarily thought involved in trying to solve problems. But in the next version of the book or versions, and maybe it might be a video series actually, and that might even work better, possibly a Chessable or a video series, to be determined on exactly the best format for that. But that is definitely something on mind in the future.
Oh, that's very exciting. I mean, I do hope that you get around to doing that. That would be super. I was just watching a video on Chessable.
I have other books in progress first.
Yes, we will come to those. I was watching a video on Chessable. I can't remember the course name or anything of the kind, that was talking about the Shankland rule. You're absolutely right. There are a couple out there who managed to distill some complicated, useful ideas into something that you can remember, which is why the Chess Bible is such a goldmine, because it's something that you can read and then take with you because of the nature of the axioms, the rules, the one-liners. It's just mnemonically helpful.
And that was the reason I wrote the book, is because I wasn't aware of any book written in that fashion.
Yeah.
Like, I can't think of any other chess book. I mean, I've read a decent amount of chess books in my career. Of course, I'm not a grandmaster, so I haven't read nearly as many as them. But even when I was writing the book, I asked several GM friends. I at least asked 10 GMs and 20 IMs that I'm affiliated with and associated with, that when I asked them, hey, have you seen a book like this with this type of axioms as the premise of the book, along with the game example? None of them said yes. The only person who actually told me something is Mr. Daniel Greiner, who runs the King's Bishop channel. And Daniel on Twitch, and occasionally streams on chess.com. And Daniel was telling me that there is a very old book written in the 80s called Maxims of Chess, I believe. So when I started writing, I wasn't even aware that this book, Maxims of Chess, even existed with this type of premise. So when I was writing, I thought I was doing something new and completely unexplored. But yeah, Maxims of Chess exists already. But this book was really more for myself. As I said, it was a blunder checklist. Yeah. Like, even now, when I prepare for tournaments, part of my tournament day preparation is actually reading my own book. I know that sounds very self-righteous, but whatever. Like, sure. You don't have to make that your ritual. Like, it's fine. Do what works for you. But at least for me, that just helps me remember things I already know and not blunder as much. Hopefully, knock on wood, right?
Well, let's maybe just ask you, as you were preparing the book, as you were researching, as you were trying to dig up those extra points, those extra axioms, did anything take you by surprise? Were there any unexpected revelations that altered your prior chess knowledge as you were going through the book?
I wouldn't say necessarily altered my prior chess knowledge, but I will say I had not thought about it that way. For example, like the concept of danger levels of attacking something of equal or higher value when you're attacked and not necessarily having to move a piece just because you're attacked, but creating a counterattack. Like, I knew this concept, but I actually had never heard anyone explain it as clearly as Levy did in his videos of calling it danger levels. And that made a lot of sense to me. So I think that's one thing that makes this book unique is, I mean, yes, it's my writing, but I'm not, quote, necessarily above quoting and taking information from other people who are much more articulate than I am, right? Because if it is a more articulate and simple way of stating a fact, that's the best way to state a fact, right? And given that Levy did that very well and clearly, and another person who did the same thing, right, is who wrote Forcing Chess Moves. I'm blanking on the name, but the person who wrote... I'm blanking on the name now.
Is it Charles Hurton?
Hurton. Yeah,
Hurton.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And truly incredible book. And that book does a great job also talking about EST, right? Equal or stronger threats. So I borrowed some of the information from both what Levy said, what Hurton said, and kind of merged them together into what I thought made sense for me. Yeah. So that's how the Chess Bible ended up coming up.
You've got so many of one-liners and axioms in the book, but is there one that you find yourself, one or two that you find yourself quoting more often during games? Or does it depend on the style of chess, whether it's blitz or whether it's online or whether it's a classical rated game?
I think the self-talk chapter is probably the most important. And of course on the self-talk chapter and the chapter on miscellaneous quotes, right? There's one that always sticks out to me is the quote by Winston Churchill that he gave, during World War II, which is never, 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 never give up, right? So I think that's one that sticks out with me is just don't give up, keep going. And okay, there are certain positions where you kind of have to give up because yes, it's surely over, but don't resign too early. And the second, right, on that note is same related, right? I believe it was Tartakover saying, right, no one ever won a game by resigning. So just always try to be tricky to the end. Yeah. And I think the school of Eric Rosen is very good at that. Yeah. But, people get mad about players who play like that. And that's, it's like bad etiquette or whatever. But look, the game's not over till it's over. There's a reason, you can choose when you resign, and the game's really not over till it's over. So there's always a chance. And even if it's a 0.1 chance, you might as well take it, right? Because who knows? I mean, those are the most exciting games to watch if you're watching football, for example, right? And I'm talking American football, not soccer here, but the games where someone throws a Hail Mary with 2 seconds left on the clock and it works, fans go wild and everyone loves those games, right? So why not give yourself the opportunity to create that same feeling? Yeah, probably it's not going to work, but who cares? You're already lost. What do you have to lose anymore? So indeed. Why not?
Yeah. No, it's funny you say that about the 16th chapter, the self-talk one. That's the one I found myself particularly enjoying as well. And I wanted to come back to that. In fact, I had a couple of questions on that chapter later on, because I really did enjoy wrestling with that particularly. Now, the book, in many ways, I suppose, relies on the importance of pattern recognition. You learn to see patterns and then recognize these same issues in your own games. But maybe you can tell us how this works in practice, or even offer a moment in your own chess career where this skill really changed the outcome of a game?
With how pattern recognition helped?
Yeah.
That's a question I'll have to come back to, because off the top of my head, I guess, well, caffeine hasn't necessarily kicked in at 7:30 a.m. I'll have to get back to you on that question. I mean, I don't want to give some general platitude or general answer, right, without thinking that one through. So let me get back to you.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, in that case, let's turn to the quickfire round, which I'm calling the Confessional Booth.
Okay.
Now, I deliberately didn't want you to see any of the questions beforehand, just to get a sort of fresh, off-the-cuff kind of response.
Sure. I didn't look at them, so
I'm very
I know
grateful.
you sent them.
I sent them by accident, like an idiot.
All good.
These are a mixture of ones related to chess, and just to get to know you as an author better. But okay, here's the first one. What's the one app on your phone that you can't live without?
Well, okay, I have to say, like, chess.com or Lead Chess. Like, that's a cop-out answer. If I have to pick one of those that isn't that, I mean, Microsoft Outlook, otherwise I'll probably lose my corporate job.
Fair enough. If you could have dinner or play a game of chess with any two people, living or dead, who would they be?
Okay. Living, I'd love to meet Vishwanathan Anand. I mean, one, I've heard he's just an incredible person by everyone who's spoken of Anand. I've never heard anyone speak ill of Anand, say he has bad temper or anything like that. Everyone said he is a wonderful gentleman. And so, as the father of modern Indian chess, I'd have to meet him. He's someone, as of Indian origin, he was someone I grew up watching his games and really resonating with him and rooting for him. So, of course, he would be one. I think dead. Well, I think Alakine or Tal would be very fun to have dinner and enjoy a few drinks with. They would have a couple beers with them. They would be, it would be, I don't know if I'd be able to understand them, but
just don't talk
don't
politics with Alakine. That's...
Yes.
About the
assuming we're speaking the same language, Alakine
yes,
or Tal would have been great fun.
Do you listen to music while playing online chess? If so, what do you listen to?
Yeah, so half and half. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And when I do, it's usually one of two things. So lately, previously, it used to be a lot of trance techno, like Armin van Buuren, Andrew Rayel, like those. This is what it was typically above and beyond that type of genre. Now I've been listening to a lot more rock and pop rock. I don't know if that's the right term. I've been listening to a lot of Two Door Cinema Club.
Okay, I don't know them, but yeah.
They're based out of Ireland. Yeah, they're very very upbeat. So I very much like their music. And then there was another band I'm listening to, Foster the People. So yeah, a bit more chilled out. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, finally, in the Confessional Booth quickfire round, do you have any pre-game rituals, or do you go in for lucky charms, lucky t-shirts or anything like that?
Yeah, well, lucky t-shirts, not so much these days. I think I used to when I was younger. I was much more superstitious about this, but pre-game ritual, I do try to arrive early as much as possible, at least for myself. I find that helps. As I mentioned, just going in during the silence and just getting my mind ready at the board. That helps me. Second is I actually do read my book at least the morning of, if not the round of. I do try to read at least the bolded parts of the axioms in the chess Bible, just to bring those ideas back to the front of my head prior to playing. And the third is, of course, if I know who I'm playing, I will at least try to prepare the opening to some extent when I play against them, right? So those are the three things I do.
Yeah, pragmatic and sensible for sure. Now I've changed one of my questions here, so I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. But now we're in middle game again, back to the chess Bible. There's so much we could talk about. I really enjoyed your work on the pawn breaks, in particular, but rather than get into some of the details, let's say you've got someone who is 1,200 rated.
Mm-hmm.
Which one? It's unfair, but which one would you ask them to tattoo onto their face? What would be their ultimate chess face mantra? Which one would you say? Gosh. This one. Pay attention to this one.
Man, that's a good question. To tattoo on their face is a pretty big ask. So I think I have to pick something short. Yeah.
It can be on their arm then. All right, let's go with their arm.
Okay. How do I say this? I think I will pick Nigel Short's because it resonates with me. Modern chess is too concerned with things like pawn structure. Forget it. Checkmate ends the game.
Fair
I like that one.
Indeed. So what would you then say to someone, let's say, that's rated 1,900? Would it be different?
I will say whenever you're looking at lines and you see more than one idea, it doesn't have to be a dichotomous plan where you pick one move or the other. You may, in fact, be able to combine the two different ideas together.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. That's a really helpful one, isn't it, for shaping calculation of variations as well. Yeah. To stay flexible at that moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the biggest problems that I have is I see a move or see one idea and see one plan, and then I just get totally obsessed with that and fail to recognize other potential resources in the position. And sometimes I'll see both resources, but I'll think I have to only do it this way, like do this first and do this next, or vice versa. But I won't think about how do I combine these ideas together.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to turn to the chapter on self-talk because I really did enjoy that. And I think it's fair to say that self-talk isn't a big deal in chess literature. It's not something I've seen talked about all too often. And so I guess I've got a couple of questions that emerge out of this. I mean, the first is, how do you coach your students to maintain a positive and constructive inner dialogue during games? So I'll stick with that one for now. What do you advise them?
Well, I'll say that to them this, look, regardless of result, just remember no one knows how hard you work in the darkness and in the silence. You're not streaming every single day or videoing what your study plan is, right? Yeah. No one knows how hard you work. Only you know how hard you work. So if you've worked hard, you should have the confidence that you can beat anyone. If you've worked hard and you truly worked hard, and you cannot, cheat yourself on this. If you actually studied and tried, and if you actually gave your best. But if you've done that, then you will naturally have the confidence that the hard work will help you perform, right? Isn't there some saying you don't rise to the level of your training, but you fall to the level of your systems? I'm probably butchering this quote. It's something like that, right? But you fall to the level of your training, something like this about Navy SEAL training, right? So I definitely butchered that quote. I know it's out there somewhere on the internet, but something along these lines, right? You will fall to the level of your training. So if you train hard and you've trained well, that's one. I think the second thing is, in addition to training hard and training well, I mean, personally, like I also was listening, at least when I was playing a fair amount, I was listening to, there was a Greatest Hits Motivation podcast on Apple that I was listening to on Apple Music. And I found listening to that prior to playing really helped my mind get into the right zone. So there's one on hard work. There's one on being a fearless warrior. Obviously, my last name's Warrior. Had to listen to that one, right? So there are two quotes in there that always stick out to me, right? One, work so hard that one day you no longer have to introduce yourself. I think about that quote a lot. And second, work so hard that one day your signature will be called an autograph. So I think about those two things a lot. And yeah, is it egotistical to think about those things and thinking about being famous and whatnot? Yeah, of course. But I mean, look, no one's going to do that for you, right?
Yeah.
Like, no one's going to hope that you become famous or whatever. No one's going to hope that for you. I mean, maybe your parents, and that's it, right? Maybe some of your closest friends, but you have to want that more than anything else to improve yourself. And it's whether it's chess or whatever you do, you're the one who has to want to improve. So
Yeah.
for me, that's what I try to tell my students is, look, you can always get better. And if you're working hard, you're always able to get better. And losses are just learning lessons. You're never really losing if you're willing to just keep going and understand what lesson can you get from this game. And of course, swindles are the best type of lessons because you still get the win, but you still get the learning experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I mean, you're getting into the realm there of the growth mindset, right? What is the name of that book? By Heimer and goodness, I can't remember now. The chess.
I can't remember the name, but yeah,
You know the
I
one I
haven't
mean.
personally haven't read it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
haven't read it. I know exactly what you're talking about, but I haven't read it. But yes, I'm
Yeah.
familiar.
Yeah, so that does come to mind as you speak there. Now, this I'm slightly riffing off of your chapter on self-talk, and just because it made me reflect on something that I stumbled across many years ago, and for most of my the last decade, I've just enjoyed going through tactics books and solving puzzles. I really enjoy doing that. And at one point, I started to feel as though if I were to say the variations out in my mind, as well as the positional evaluation, it helped me to organize my thinking. It helped me to remember the distinct lines rather than for them to become murkily merged. How do you think self-talk is best used in the practice of calculation and positional evaluation? I mean, do you talk to yourself, mutter under your breath, or say moves in your mind?
So at home, what I do is what my coach has suggested is writing the moves down in a notebook. So that was something going old school. My coach recommends like have a notebook. You have your book that you're reading or whatever, or a computer position. So you write down, okay, like this game, this position, okay, white to move, and then just write down all the variations that you're calculating. I am definitely not doing this consistently as I was, but when I was doing this definitely helped my calculation 100%. Because as I'm going through the process of writing down moves, like I would calculate like 3 moves and then I would jump back to the first move and then start calculating something else, and that's just not good. Like I would not go deep enough when I should have, and I would stop calculating too early, or I would just like a squirrel, right? My mind was everywhere. So getting in the habit of forcing myself to write it down, at least when I was studying somewhat consistently, that helped me a lot.
Yeah. Now, if you could go back and give one piece of advice to the young Vishnu who was playing speed chess at Crossroads Mall, what would it be?
I have no regrets about what I've done. Yeah, do I wish I was better at chess than I am? Sure. And spent more time on it when I was younger? Sure. But but there's no point of living in regret and going back in time. I guess the one piece of advice I would give myself is be very careful of the friends that you associate with. I think that would be the piece of advice. I definitely know I wasted a fair amount of my early 20s associating with not the best crowd necessarily, and not okay. I never got into any legal trouble. I'll put it like that. Disclaimer: never been arrested, and haven't gone to. But I did, I did go to college parties a lot, and I was doing all that type of stuff that I wasn't really focused on, building my career, building a business, or bettering myself, or getting in shape, or things like that. And so I would go back to myself back then, and probably just found better friends.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, wisdom there. I completely understand.
Yeah, well, that's why I have gray hairs in my 30s, because I think I got the wisdom a little bit earlier.
Yeah, well, I'm competing against you with the grey hairs and winning there, although I'm a little bit older, so there we go. Now, let's turn to the end game. I've got a few questions that I wanted to
Sure.
finish off with. So that's just a challenge status quo kind of question. Do you hold any unconventional or controversial views about chess strategy, chess improvement, openings, or are you fairly orthodox? Heretic or
I think
orthodox?
openings, yeah, I think openings don't necessarily matter to an extent, as long as, in the sense that, okay, I think you can play sidelines that are still somewhat solid, and that's a good way to get a fresh game and surprise your opponent. Like, for example, one that comes to mind is e4, e6, d4, d5, knight d2, knight c6, like the Guimard variation of the French. It's maybe the 6th or 7th line, and it's a real line. It's definitely in the database, and people have played it before. Even Nakamura has played it before. But is it totally sound? No. But is it something that... Is it totally unsound? No, either. White still has to know what they're doing for a decent amount of moves in order to really prove the advantage. And how many people are going to take the time to actually go through those random sidelines,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I do believe, yes, you should have a mainline repertoire, but there are even sidelines that from time to time, especially when you're playing someone who's lower rated than a kid, I try to pick sidelines that, one, they're sidelines, and two, they're solid sidelines.
Yeah.
So even if the child figures out what they're doing, I'm not getting blown off the board instantly.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there are some sidelines that are just very, very sharp. Actually, Guimard probably is one of the sharper ones. But another sharp one, for example, is something you could think of is Christoph Selecki's Dirty Harry Sicilian, right?
Where the H5 one.
Yeah, the crazy
H5
move.
Yeah.
And, it absolutely makes no sense when you first see it. But if you look into it, there's some ideas. But if white really knows what they're doing, okay, then black probably is in a bit of trouble, but it's not totally lost. But yeah, somewhat unpleasant.
Yeah. Okay, if you could change one aspect of current chess culture, what would it be?
I think that is, and I'm probably not the most qualified person to speak on this because I'm not in that world, and I'm not in the sense of I'm not in the organizer world, or I'm not in the I'm not a tournament director. I used to be, but I would only do small club tournaments. So I would say, though, finding a way to get women and girls into chess. I think that's something that's really important. I think chess has been a male-dominated game, and I think the way that chess has so many lessons that can be learned by everyone, regardless of age or gender or race or whatever. Yeah. It doesn't matter where you're from. There are so many life skills that I've learned from this game, and I think this opportunity has to be extended to everyone, regardless of what gender you are, where you're from, what you do. So for me, finding a way to create a safe space for women and young girls and children to get into the game of chess and to participate in tournaments and to really learn those life skills and feel like they can compete, of course, and they have the opportunities to do so in a safe environment is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's been fantastic to see some of the fallout of the Queen's Gambit in this regard, I think.
Yes.
With people like Anna Rudolph and some of the pioneers, Jennifer Shahade and others. They've been absolutely fantastic. So yeah, 100% agree. Chess has changed so much, hasn't it? In the last, even in the last 20 years, because of the rise of online chess platforms, streaming, the enormously powerful engines that we now have. Has any of this influenced you in a notable way, and did it have an impact on the writing of your book?
Yeah, well, in a way, it was very great because there's so many resources to take information from. But that's a double-edged sword because there's so many resources that you can take information from. It's hard to know what's right and what's wrong and what to include and what not to include. And for example, I think one thing that does well for streams and views are gambit type openings, right? So those tend to get really high views, for example. And I'd say Eric Rosen is the pioneer with that, with the Stafford Gambit, but I also know William Grafe has a whole Gambit series on his YouTube channel and does an excellent job on the Gambits. And for Blitz and Bullet, I mean, those openings work very, very well. And especially when they're played by a strong player who actually knows what they're doing, and they're players who don't know what they're doing against such a tricky opening with very limited time. Of course, you're going to see some really cool tactics that are out of the ordinary and get some quick wins. I think the problem is that people say, oh, like chess is easy now because I'm just going to use this gambit and then just go crush everyone in my local classical tournament or whatever. And it may work in a couple games, but when it doesn't work, it wasn't supposed to work. Like there's a reason why the top guys don't play that. So I think that's one problem. But I'll say what helped with the book, right, is it took time to find the research to find the right person or people to help with the book. Eventually, yes, I found Chess Mood. I was using Chess Mood to study myself, and I honestly think that's I'll say this 100% with confidence that is the 100% best platform to becoming a better chess player. 0 to 2,500. Wow. There's nothing that even comes close.
There's an endorsement.
Yeah, that is the best chess website. Period. For improvement, best chess website, because of multiple reasons. And I know this isn't the podcast for talking great about them, but there are so many reasons. But most notably, I would say their opening repertoire. They've done a great job creating an under 2,000 opening repertoire, which is very easy to learn for white and black. You can have a repertoire playing e4 as white and playing e6 the French or the Dutch as black, and you can learn everything in less than 12 hours. And it's very simple. Yeah. It's just very systems-based, ideas-based. But their deeper opening repertoire is very well thought out because a lot of the opening systems that they play can transpose, even if you try to get move order tricked into a different type of opening, it's still something that's within your repertoire. Yeah. So you have no fear.
Yeah. Well, I will put a link to chessmood.com in the information to this episode anyway, because of their article on you. So listeners can find out more by going to their webpage. And I've got to be honest, I hadn't heard of Chess Mood until you mentioned it. So I'm looking forward to exploring that myself. What can we expect from you next? Now, I know you've got a few things in the pipeline, and also with things publishing. Can you disclose any of that yet?
Yeah, I definitely can. So number one, we have a book called Alphabet Chess coming out. So the website is called alphabetchess.com, www.alphabetchess.com. If you like the website, thank my wonderful wife who did it. If you don't like the website, well, yell at me and I'll pass on what we should do to update it to make it even better. But version 1.0 is up right now. So alphabetchess.com was inspired, and Alphabet Chess, the book series, was actually inspired by my son. So my son is currently 3 years old. But last September, when he was 2, I was reading to him one night, A is for apple, B is for ball, C is for cat, this type of book, because he's 2 and learning the alphabet. And as I was reading this book, I had the idea, oh, wait, let me illustrate and do A to Z of all the chess terms to teach chess in a fun, kid-friendly way. Because I find most chess books written for children are written to the age 6 or 7 age category plus. So someone younger than that is just too young and can't understand it. It's just too complicated. And so I wanted to create something, just as a father, I wanted to have something as a fun, easy way to introduce chess to my son, because I obviously want him to play chess. I don't necessarily expect him to become next world champion or anything like that, but I do at least want him to learn the life skills of the game and learn to have some appreciation for playing chess. That said, that's why this book was created. So the book comes out in a couple months. It's done by Thinkers Publishing, and our wonderful illustrator Dirk has a great job making the illustrations pop to life. But yeah, actually a lot of the illustrations were inspired by popular memes. So there's I think it's something that is not just for kids, but also for adults will enjoy it as well. It's definitely meant to be funny. It's definitely meant to be educational. But we will have the first book in a hardcover, and along with the first book, we will also be doing a coloring book for the children who, even if Alphabet Chess, the first book, the hardcover is too hard for them. I'm talking about the 1 or 2 year olds. At least they can get the crayons out and start coloring and trying to practice tracing their letters. So that will be out this October, November, pending no printing issues, knock on wood. But that's set to come out later this year. But with Alphabet Chess, we actually plan on doing an entire series. So there'll be a series of 10 books at minimum. So book 2 will be similar to book 1, which is highly illustrated for kids, and we'll have another 26 chess terms. Books 3, 4, and 5 will be A to Z, all the chess openings. So the Anderson opening, the bird opening, the cow opening.
The cow opening. You think you've got to the cow opening.
We'll also talk about how good it is objectively, right? So from a principled point of view, is it actually a good opening? Does it have a good surprise value? What are the plans and ideas for both players? So we'll definitely include that and have a few fun illustrations as well. Books 6 and 7 is going to be called Alphabet Chess Around the World. A to Z, best move played in every country. So we'll talk about A for Angola, B for Bolivia, C for Cambodia, right? What was a famous game that was played there? How did chess get into that country? You know, what some of the history about chess in that country, and the best move that was played by a player from that country. 8 and 9 will be on player profiles. Of course, best player prior to the computer era, and then after the computer era, A to Z. And then book 10 will be Alphabet Chess Tournament History Edition. So that will be the most important historic tournaments, A to Z. For example, Z would be Zurich 1953. Right. So as a child grows, and really as they get more and more into chess, the chess aspect of the book series becomes much higher, and it becomes more chessy and less illustrated. But the idea, right, we start them when they enjoy the illustrations, get into it, do the colorings, and then slowly as they have an appreciation for chess, then they'll be able to appreciate, okay, what's the next thing? And now that I know how to play, openings. What's the next thing? Oh, it's a global game. I can see it's played everywhere. Oh, what's the next thing? Who are the best players? And then finally, getting into the chess history side of things. Maybe there'll be a book 11 where we'll talk about Alphabet Chess Content Creator Edition. So that's probably more of a marketing ploy, where I will do, A for Anna Kramling, B for the Botez sisters, C for Canty, D for the Daniels, that be Naroditsky, Griner, and, Danny Wrench. So there might be a book like that where we have best move played by every content creator in chess, and then just throw it all in one book, A to Z. And that's probably the last book. But in addition to that, I'm thinking obviously about like the books. I also want to work on creating stuffed animals, for example, with these characters that are in the book. So working with a company, for example, like Hasbro, to create stuffed animals and keychains and maybe even a chess set. Like the Storytime Chess has a chess set, right? So creating an alphabet chess set where we sell the chess set along with the books. Eventually, yes, I will come back to writing version 2.0 of the Chess Bible along with the workbook. And there's one other work that I have noodled around with, although haven't started writing it, but the book will be called Mirror Mirror, and the idea is I'll be writing that eventually with Grandmaster Julio Sidoro, who's one of my good friends. The idea of that book is to talk about openings, but how certain openings are mirrored on either color. So, for example, the bird F4 D5 is just a reversed Dutch. Yeah. But there's actually quite a few key differences between the bird and the Dutch in terms of the extra tempo. Interestingly, Julio told me, like, the Dutch is actually better than the bird in the sense of actually not having that tempo is better, which I still don't understand. And that's
odd?
Not the only reason I'm not. That's not the only reason I'm not a grandmaster, but I definitely still don't understand that reason.
Yeah.
But he talked about that, and then, for example, like in this Alapin Sicilian E4 C5 C3, right? There is the English opening, which is the mirror of that of C4 E5, and with the Knight C3, Knight F6, Knight F3, C6 line, which leads to kind of a reversed Alapin. That's becoming very popular. So we'll be talking about the nuances between all the different type of mirror openings. What's the benefit of playing it white side, and what's the benefit of playing black side? I've actually found that would be personally very helpful for me, because I'll understand an opening for one color, and then the second it switches color, like my brain just doesn't process that.
Right.
And so I completely forget all the ideas. Like I really have to be very conscious of playing the opening, reversing colors in my head to really remember the plans and ideas, because they're similar.
Yeah.
They're mirrored, and there's a reason that the plans are similar. I just personally struggle making that connection, so I feel going through that process would be helpful. But those are the spits in the fire right now.
I'm really excited about all of these, and I've got 2 young children myself, so I'm really looking forward to introducing them to my kids, and maybe in the future we could get you back as well to talk about those. The alphabet chess link I will put in the notes to this episode, and it's alphabetchess.com, and you can even see some examples of the fantastic artwork there on the webpage. I just came across a new course as well on Chessball, 1C3 by Michael Green, reversed Caro Can. That was a new one for me.
That would make sense.
Yeah, fascinating.
That would make sense.
Well, maybe we could end on a lighter note. What's the funniest or strangest thing that has ever happened to you in a chess tournament or playing chess?
Okay, it didn't happen to me, but I witnessed this happen. So, and it's funny because this was played between an expert and a master. So, this expert is playing this master, and the expert actually plays a King's Gambit. And completely crushing this master. I mean, it's like move 13, like knight sacrificing itself on F7. Black is totally busted. And black plays king takes F7. And then white continues the attack with like bishop C4 or queen H5 and the rook on F1, just totally killing him. And then maybe 5-6 moves later, the king has moved back to E8. And the master castles queenside. And he's already moved his king. And like me and my friend are looking at each other, and we noticed this because we just saw this game that his king's on F7 like 15 minutes ago. He played king back to E8, then he castles queenside.
Oh my goodness!
And the expert, the master, don't realize that.
No,
they don't realize. Like they play the rest of the game, and me and my friend are outside just laughing our heads off because they're playing as if they're dead serious. Like it's still going, no issues.
Meanwhile, his king's escaped onto the queen side.
Yeah, his king's escaped. Like now, the expert's totally busted, and he goes on to lose the game.
Oh no!
And at the end of the game, we look at him. We're like, "Hey, dude, you do know like he played an illegal move. He castled. He couldn't have done that because king's on F7." And his eyes pop wide open. He's like, no. And so he pulls out the notation sheet, looks at the notation, and clear as day, like king takes f7 was played, king e8, and then a few moves later, castles queenside. And I feel bad because it was a kid, like he was not a young kid, but teenager. It was maybe 14, 15. So he goes to the tournament director and tries to dispute this after the game, but TD's like, look, you guys agreed it's over. Like you agreed, you played out the game. Like I can't do anything about this now. So I mean, this is obviously before, it wasn't on a DGT board, it wasn't broadcast or anything. Right. So, that legality wasn't caught. But
oh, that's rough.
Yeah, it was
that's
just
painful.
Oh, it was painful. I mean, yeah, kid. I felt bad. Yeah, it was like +6 according to the engine. I mean, completely winning, like no chances and. Yeah, but the best part of that story was at the end, after the kid left, the tournament director said, yeah, sorry, I can't change it. The master was my friend's friend, so master looks at us and just completely cold-blooded says, I do what it takes to win.
Oh my goodness. Oh, chess players are so funny. Oh, that is brilliant.
It was hilarious. One of the best stories for sure.
Now, where can people keep track of your output? How can people get in touch with you or find out where you're playing, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so, I mean, playing-wise, my playing amount has gone down significantly in the last couple of years. I was playing a lot in 2022. I'll probably pick that up in a couple of years right now. Alphabet Chess is definitely... because it's not just one book. We have the first book coming out this November, but there's at least 10 books planned, so I need to write them all. Plus keep my day job until I can full-time do this, which would be cool, but I don't know if that's a possibility. But yes, at least for the interim, you can reach out to me on alphabetchess.com. There's a contact page there, or Principled. If you want to take lessons with me, for example, I offer lessons through my Gmail. Principledchess.com is my Gmail, which you could reach me for business inquiries for lessons. But yeah, no tournaments planned for now. I'll probably play a couple locally, nothing crazy, but we'll see how it goes.
Well, Vishnu Warrior, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, and this has been a true pleasure.
It's for me, and so this is a wrap for today's inaugural episode of the Chestnut Bookcase, and I hope that you have enjoyed our dive into Vishnu's book, The Chess Bible. And remember, whether you're strategizing your next move or just obsessively reorganizing your bookshelf by opening sequence, there's, as Vishnu said, there's always something new to discover and enjoy in chess. If you've liked what you've heard today, hit the subscribe button, leave a review. It's the closest we chess players get to socializing outside of chess tournaments after all. And don't forget to share this podcast with a friend. After all, nothing says social skills like spending a few hours debating the finer points of pawn structure, right? I'm Chris Tilling, reminding you to keep your pieces protected and your oddities proudly on display. I will see you in the next episode.